Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're going to give it a couple of seconds, Lori, while we let everyone in the room.
Wonderful. You know how much I love watching the numbers at the bottom grow. That's like my favorite thing to do. It's kind of like winning. Yeah, it's what is that game with the lotto and the ball keeps spinning around and the numbers go? That's what I feel like I'm watching, is like the numbers keep coming in. So happy to see everybody coming back. Love our frequent flyers, and a warm welcome to anybody who's joining us for the first time today.
For sure. All right. Oh, there's Emma. Emma, I'm going to be messaging you. Good morning to you.
Hello, Emma. Yes, I've got Lauren sending you a special message, Emma. I was going to send you one, so you're getting a special message straight from me through Lauren today.
All right, Lori, I'm going to go ahead and jump in.
You got it. Go for it.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lauren Simpson. I'm with the Small Business Development Center, and I am going to take 2 seconds to quickly share my screen and give you an intro as to who it is we are and what we do. Sorry, my my desktop is a little messy. I've got so many different projects going on.
I know you do.
So again, my name is Lauren Simpson. I'm with the SBDC, or the Small Business Development Center. We're a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country. So regardless of what state you might be in, you should be able to get connected with a local SBDC office. And you'll want to do so because we offer no cost services for local small businesses. And they're at no cost to you because they're your tax dollars that help. Excuse me, your tax dollars at work, which is for sure helpful, right?
Yes.
And then for the Los Angeles Regional Network, which is the network that I represent, we have locations throughout the Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. And you'll see our offices represented on the map in front of you. You can see we go as far out as Camarillo, Santa Clarita, over to Pasadena. Today's guest is one of our Pasadena clients, so shouts out to the Pasadena SBDC, and then down to Long Beach. So regardless of what area you might be in, please get in contact with one of our offices. Lori, here's a deeper dive as to what it is we do. We offer no cost business advising. And so you're able to get connected for one-on-one meetings with business experts such as Lori Williams, who's our financial guru, the guru of all numbers, as well as virtual training. So much like the training you've joined today. And then again, get in contact with us. We're here to help you. And you can contact us via phone, 866-588-7232. Or online, you can go to smallbizla.org/new client outside Los Angeles area, which it's funny, Lori, we do receive tons of clients outside of the LA area joining this webinar. For those of you who are outside LA.
I know, I think it's our YouTube too. It's so funny. I go on the YouTube and I just see show after show after show, and it's awesome. So I think we're getting out there. We're getting popular. Like I said, we're going to be on Oprah any day now. We're just waiting on that call. So if anybody knows Oprah, tell her you got to check us out.
Just send over a link and we're ready.
Yeah.
For those of you outside the LA area, please connect with us online at americassbdc.org/find-your-SBDC. And then Lori, really quickly, I wanted to let everyone know, I'm gonna have to stop share really quick, I'm sorry, and then jump back in. I wanted to share that we have sorry guys. The California Dream Fund. I'm going to put a link into the chat. The registration is open. We are currently in our pilot. And so that's going strong right now. We had our first class last night, but go ahead and click the link that I will be putting into the chat, and you'll be able to register for future cohorts. And then finally, Lori, quick housekeeping. For questions, please be sure to put those into the Q&A. Again, questions into the Q&A, as Lori will be able to see those questions and hopefully get you some answers. If not during the show, we'll get back to you after the show. And then the chat's going to be reserved for any links that Lori would like me to plug in for you, as well as information related to our special guest today. And with that, Lori, I'm going to send it over to you. Good morning again.
Wonderful. Good morning. Okay, I've got a couple things. You've mentioned tax dollars at work, Lauren. So the first thing is some of you may have filed your taxes and now where's my refund? So in the chat, Lauren is going to put a couple links. One of them is how to check your refund status on the IRS website. I think they've gotten a little bit better. This has been around for a bit now. Keep in mind, you have to know your social security number or your ITIN number. You need to know your tax filing status and the exact amount of the refund claimed on your tax return. This is dollars and cents, the exact amount. So keep that as a handy tool so you can check to see where your refund, if you're one of those lucky people that get a refund. Okay, I've got some classes through the SBDC that I'm going to be teaching, and I wanted to give you the links in case anybody wants to sign up. So these are the dates. Confused about sales tax goes through pretty much all the information you need to understand, from getting a seller's permit to what you need to understand about selling out of state, selling e-commerce, etc. If you don't have a good understanding of how sales tax works, I really suggest you sign up for this show. When you get in trouble with sales tax, it can get pretty ugly, guys. I've had in the past, and even just this week, talked to another client that has a lien on his company because he didn't pay his sales tax bill. And so you really want to stay on top of that. And there's a new rule that came into play several years ago that changes the way sales tax is charged in out of state sales, I should say. So a lot of people aren't familiar with that. Check this website, or check this webinar out, and you'll learn more about that. And then I wanted to mention this last week. By the way, last week I did my blank Excel document, and it turned out to be a huge success. Heard from a ton of people on it, got great responses. I was telling Lauren that whenever I work one-on-one with somebody, I'm always on a Zoom call and I'm building an Excel document in front of them while we speak. And it really helps because I'm customizing it to them and they're learning. And so I took this gander. I said, you know what? I'm going to try to just, instead of having a presentation, I'm just going to have an Excel document with some information in it. And I'm going to build it online. It may work, it may not. Well, it turned out to be such a huge success. We got more feedback from that webinar or that show than I did from others. So I'm going to be doing it again. But where I want to go right now is I have 2 finance literacy classes. The first one is an overview of accounting requirements. If you're asking questions like, what do I need to do? What software should I use? What's the minimum accounting? What do I need to know for my taxes, etc.? Sign up for that one. And the second one goes into much more detail that I started last week of going over performance measurements, the calculations, how to manage your company from a CFO perspective. So those are some upcoming classes. Once again, Lauren's putting the way to register into the chat. Upcoming shows, we have next week, guest is Stefano, which is the owner of Brew Wings. He's going to talk about the pros, cons, good, bad, and ugly of owning a food truck. You might have even seen Brew Wings food truck if you're around the LA Orange County area. Then on May 11th, we got Abby of Zizia, and she started with, well, she's an herbalist. So she started out consulting, and then she got herbal products, and she's selling them retail, online. She's been through so much, has so much to share with the audience. That's going to be pretty exciting too. And then May 25th, I decided to do another special Ask Lori. Let's start with a blank Excel document. I'm going to expand upon what I was talking about last week and give you some more aspect of how to manage it financially. So that's what's coming up in the near future. Now for today, I'm very excited to present our guest speaker, and I plan this accordingly. So I checked in. Leeanna contacted me through the SBDC on October of 2021. I had to look up to see when it first was. And what happened is she wanted to help understand the company's financial numbers, including profitability and long-term forecast. Now, everybody that knows me, that was music to my ears. Oh my God, a client asking to understand these things rather than me pushing it on them, right? So what happened is she was just beginning to sell into retail stores, and she wanted to make sure she had her numbers correct. Once again, oh, numbers correct before you sell in retail. You hear me talk about that all the time. So she provided me with this spreadsheet. I was pretty impressed. I said, send to me ahead of time anything you have. If you have nothing, that's fine. I always tell people that. And in the spreadsheet, she had the selling price, she had the sales forecast, she had the cost to produce, she had a lot of information, right? So what I did is she had the information, but she didn't have it aligned in a way that we could do analysis. So I helped her build a spreadsheet which took her data and then allowed to analyze it in a CFO fashion, like I was talking about last week to you guys. And I was just really impressed with her common sense approach. You know, she maybe didn't have a strong understanding of finance, but she was making decisions about the business and the financials just on what was logical and made good sense. And she was making really sound business decisions. And it was from outsourcing the product to setting selling prices and choosing distribution partners. And the interesting part to me is she was just starting out. It wasn't like she had this long time experience. It was just the mindset she had in the way she looked at things, right? So once I was starting to talk about Excel documents, I was like, I've got to get Leeanna on the show. So today I am very excited to have Leeanna on the show. She's going to talk about her company. She's going to talk about her really cool product, and she's going to talk about her common sense approach to business. Welcome, Leeanna.
Hi.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. We've talked about you coming on the show for a while. I have been really, really excited about you being here. So I am very happy to have you on the show today.
Oh,
but what we got to do is we got to start out. Tell the audience about your cool company, the product you sell, and what's the story behind it. So give us the whole scoop.
So my product's called Tooktake. This is Tooktake. It's a medication and vitamin reminder label, and it's super simple. The best way to explain is just show it super fast. It's basically a little label. It comes off the tabs, and then you stick it on whatever you need to remember to use or take. And then when you take a dose, you just take the little label off, and you know you've taken your dose for the day.
Oh, that's cool. You know, I never saw it in action. Because
sometimes I try and explain it, and then I'm like, it's easier to just show it. And like the coolest thing is Tooktake works on everything, like liquid medications and lotions, and so you could really use it on anything that you're adding to your wellness routine to just make sure you do it and build that habit, and then you can stop using it. So it's really fun. And I came up with the idea for it when I was actually in treatment for breast cancer a few years ago, and I had a ton of things to manage the side effects from my chemo treatment. And it was really stressful for my family because we couldn't keep track of when I took what. And if I wasn't sure when I took it, we'd wait longer for some things because we couldn't take too much of it. So I started to make little labels to help us keep track, and they were really helpful. And then when I was done with treatment, I had one thing I had to still take every day. And it was so hard to remember because I was getting back to my normal routine in my life and I was busy. So I just couldn't remember. So I took out my little labels again and was like, hey, I might be onto something. Like, I can't be the only person who just can't remember to take something, or I'd get confused if I took it or not. And it's really important for me to take it. So then I'd worry. So now I don't have that stress. I know when I take it, and it's super easy. And
you know what I like about it is I've used those little pill things that you put the pills in the plastic container, right? To try to remind myself to take the vitamins, and vitamins are huge, right?
Yeah.
It either wouldn't fit, or I could only get a certain amount. And then I was always having to spend all this time transferring them into there. And I'd be like, did I transfer everyone? What I love is you could just keep it in the original container.
Yeah.
Label, look at it, and you're good to go. That is really ingenious. I love it.
Yeah, you have all the directions with it, and yeah, you don't have to have the time sorting things or wondering if like all of a sudden something's in the wrong spot. I don't know. I think that they're helpful. They're not for everyone, but they seem to be helping enough people, so that's good.
We are, because we're going to talk about this as the show goes on. You've been getting a lot of requests for sales in large areas, but let's first start out. So you get this idea, and I always want to understand from people, and it's really beneficial to the guests. How did you go from the idea to the action? It's one thing to make a little prototype, as I call it. Everything I make, I call it a prototype. That way, if I screw up, it can be called a prototype, right? Your prototype, And then there's this stage where you got to go from just telling everybody about your great idea to doing something. And I swear 98%, I made that number up, guys, could be not true, but I swear 98% of people spend their entire life on their couch and in family gatherings about their great idea, and only a small percentage physically go and make it happen. Take us back to that. How did you go from idea to physical product?
Well, I think in that area, we were really lucky because my husband and I are both designers. So we were able to design the product ourselves, which saved a lot of money. We didn't have to pay someone else to do a lot of that research work for us and figure out what would work. And then I think we're also lucky in that it wasn't super expensive. It's not like a plastic thing or a machine, or we didn't have molds and things like that. It's actually really difficult to print, which we found out, but once we found someone, it wasn't as daunting as some products. Like I've had people come to me and say, do you think I should try this? And it's going to cost us $200,000 just to make a prototype. And I'm like, I can't answer that for you. Like,
you're right.
My prototypes were like, I think the first ones were like maybe $50 each because we were doing such short quantities. So it wasn't a huge risk for my family. So I feel lucky with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of the companies I look at, the molds are at least 5,000, and then you have to buy a large quantity. You've got such a skid in the game right from the beginning. It's really, really challenging. Now, when you created it, so you got the product, then you had to find somebody to produce it, and you had to figure out where you're going to sell it. I don't know which came first, so I'm going to give you both. How did you figure out where to sell it and go about getting it sold? And then how did you figure out where to produce it? And you start wherever you want on that one.
Well, my gut told me that the place for Tooktake to be sold was in drugstores, so people could get it when they were getting their cough medicine or picking up their prescriptions, or like it needed to be right where people were getting things. So my first thought was I need to get it into all of the drugstores in town, like, around the country. And just as we started to get our feet under us and find the right contacts, COVID happened and nobody was talking to anybody. So we had to quickly say, hey, we're going to try direct to consumer through our website. So we redid our website and like really tried to do that because nobody could go into a store and buy it.
Right. Hey, do you think that turned out to be a blessing in disguise? How did that work?
I think it did. I think it gave me a lot more time to really figure out the business. And like, everyone thinks like, oh, it would be great to be in, name a drug, CVS or something right out of the gate. But it's such a huge ramp up to that kind of production and the money we would have had to invest that this was actually really good because we could do a much smaller run of product and really kind of get feedback from more people who we didn't know and figure out how we talk about our product. Because that's the other thing. It's not everything resonates with people the way you think it will. So it gave us, 18 months or so to really just focus and see what was working and what wasn't, and reach out to people and say, hey, we noticed you made this comment, that not trying to change your mind. Can you just tell me a little more about, your experience so we could try and address that?
See what you just said, and Lauren, this is a gem for the chat. I'm going to paraphrase it right now, and I'm going to say it's a beneficial to start small. I am always lecturing on this because people are like, I got an idea and I want to sell it in Walmart. They go for the biggest big box retailer. And I tell them, not only is that a long ramp up time and you're probably going to run out of cash and go broke and be exhausted before you get there, but you have no time to figure out what you need to do. Even like, I love what you said, even changing the way you are verbally presenting the product. We just don't know until we know, and you're trying something new. And I really, really try to get our audience and new entrepreneurs to just slow down a little. I feel like since, I know this is the thing I harp on, since Hollywood picked up entrepreneurship, everything has to be a big overnight success. And they miss the fact that how do companies get there? They start out selling one product at a time on a small basis, and they have a learning curve. So thank you so much for saying that. So after what did you find out? Like, what if there's anything that really changed that you noticed in feedback? Anything that stands out? I'm more curious about it.
Our main feedback was we found out that our original packaging that we thought was so clever, like I thought it made so much sense to everybody. People had no idea what the product was. They like, it was like a clear bag. Oh wait, here I have it. Sorry.
I love that when you go, we were so clever, but
like we thought like you'd see this and be like, I put that on my vitamins or my medicine. Like, don't you get it? Nobody had any idea what it was. Our thing on the back like wasn't that helpful. And so people be like, yeah, I bought this and I like it, but I'm still a little confused. I'm like, how can you be confused? You stick it on and you take the tabs off and you're like, well, it doesn't say that. I'm like, it doesn't? Really? So, so that was huge. We changed our package. So you can see what it is. You can see the label. We have step-by-step instructions on the back. We show it on different products. So it really helped us because we're like, I don't understand. Why would people be confused? Like, and I think that's common for entrepreneurs to get so caught up in their own product. And especially if it's something new that you have to explain how to use it, even if it's really simple, you still need to explain it to people. And I think a lot of people I've seen and met through doing this, like we skip that step because it's so clear in our own head. And
it's so true. It is so true. When we know something, we forget that we know it. See, I always say that that's why I'm able to teach finance so clearly, is because even though I've been in finance for a long time, I started the more marketing fuzzy person, right? Confused by all those finance people that I didn't know what in the world they were talking about. They spoke foreign languages. Mm-hmm. So for me, I learned late. And so I learned what I didn't know and kind of knew to communicate. And another thing that it brings to mind, as you say, I remember, MBA school many years ago, but they were talking about, okay, this is how long ago, I just showed my age again, but the fax machine and the beginning of the cell phone. And they were saying that the first people out are really the first company to create something. They have a more difficult time because they have to first say, what is it? What does it do? And why do you even need it? It's once you're duplicating that. And I can totally see, and I can even tell with looking at your package, the second one I could go, oh, I get it. I understand how to use it. But you're correct on that. And a lot of times, especially, we talked about the elevator speech a couple of weeks ago, and people can't explain what their product does really quickly. And that's a key time. And you need the ramp up time to be able to do that. Absolutely. Now, I know you designed it. I gotta believe that you don't have a little printer in your house and you're not printing all these labels off. So there is some kind of manufacturing, contacting the manufacturing, having problems with manufacturing, I'm assuming here. So why don't you tell us about the good, bad, and ugly and what you learned on the manufacturing process?
Yeah, and from the beginning, I really wanted Tooktake made here in the US. Part of that was just, I was just afraid of the logistics of getting things from overseas. And I'm like, that seems like a whole nother thing to learn. And I don't know that I want to do that. And the quantities were like I made one call about it and it was such huge amounts of money and quantities of product. I was like, this is not for me. But yeah, we actually spent probably 4 or 5 months just getting told no by different printers. It couldn't be made. And we finally found someone who was willing to work with us and test it. And it took them another, I think, 2 months to figure it out. And us going back and forth and trying different things and adjusting things. So it was no easy task finding someone to do it for us.
6 months. Okay, I always like to be a little on the inspirational side here. How did you keep going? I mean, you gotta have, it's just like that story. You knock on the door enough times, you're like, oh, just shoot me. How did you keep believing that somebody can do it?
I think I just got kind of stubborn and was like, oh, come on, somebody has to be able to do this. Like maybe I'm not explaining it right, or maybe I'm not asking the right questions. And finally I was able to find someone who was nice enough to say, here is where the problem is. Like we could isolate what people were saying no to, because most places were just like, no, we can't do this for you. I said, could you tell me why? We just can't. I'm like, okay. So finally I got somebody who was nice enough to, explain to me where the issue was. So then I could really research that and talk to someone and say, okay, here is my product. Here's the area that we're concerned about and that people seem to have trouble with. Could you help us figure this out? And then somebody was like, hey, I'm up for figuring that out for you.
You know, what you just said is really interesting to me. And this is another good capture, Lauren. If you ask the manufacturer, what part of the process are you having difficulty with? That gives you a whole bunch of information that you can either use to overcome or you can use in another situation. I've had a lot of people get no's with a manufacturer, but never thought and had the conversation of just getting them to break down which part of the manufacturing process is the problem and overcoming it. So there's another, Lauren, just say, you know, if you're working with a manufacturer and they're saying no, try to get them to explain which part of the process is a problem. Fascinating. Keep going.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've learned with every part of starting a business, because I don't have a business background, of not being afraid to ask questions. Like, I'm not afraid that someone's going to be like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. It's like, you're right, I don't. That's why I'm asking questions. Sometimes people are grumpy and they just don't want, they don't want to explain. But usually I find that if I say like, hey, I'm really new to this, I'm not understanding why these numbers are so high. Can you tell me, is it something I've specifically done in the design or done in my packaging, or the way that I've asked you to do this, it's making it this expensive? Like, we just had an instance with some boxes we were having done for an Interpack case, and the numbers came back super high. And I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting that. So I just wrote and said, hey, this is my first design like this. Can you tell me, did I include something that made this cost this much? And she's like, oh yeah, the way that you did the box closure is the most expensive way to do it. I'm like, well, I don't really care how the box closes, I just want to close. Like, I don't care. And we got the price in half because I had just unknowingly taken a picture of something that had a really expensive box design. But if I hadn't asked, I would have just been like, wow, those are just really expensive. I guess that's what they cost.
You know, nuggets, I actually would always teach when I was teaching at USC and Pepperdine, the entrepreneurship class. I would tell them it's the power of questions. Questions mean so much. I love what you said, because I also see a lot of new entrepreneurs. They're trying to be this experienced person they're not. So they're really afraid to do what you just described. Say, hey, I really don't know what I'm doing. Did I just do something to cause this? Can you give me some better advice? And I just express to people, just ask. That is brilliant. And that was a perfect example. Here you got a closure on you don't want, and it just increased the price. Wow, tons of nugget of information. I just like stopping at a moment and capturing these because they're just so valuable. So keep going. How did you end up finding we found the right manufacturer? Did you have to buy a huge quantity?
We didn't. We did, for us, it seemed like a huge quantity at the time. It was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to sell like 500 of these? So it felt huge to me. Now it seems like it was silly. But again, I just asked sort of like, where are the points at which it will cost me less? Like, where are the break points where the price will drop down? And I picked the highest one I could afford at the time and said, okay, my goal is to sell these and be able to get to that next point so I could get my costs down a little. And then we just keep going from there. It's like, I always ask where the next breaking point is, because anything being manufactured or printed or anything, there is price breaks for quantity. So it's good to know what you're aiming for and how much of a difference it makes. Like, a lot of things, it can cut the price in half if you could double your order. So sometimes it's like, you know what, I don't need 5,000 of these, but it's only $50 more than getting, half as many. So I'm just going to suck it up and buy that many.
Yeah. Yeah. And, guys, let me give you a little Excel to what Leeanna's saying here is when I'm building an Excel sheet and we're doing these questions and answers, what I do is I build in this aspect where you can plug in a different quantity and a different price, identify the amount of cash you have to pay up front and when you're going to be able to get that cash back. Because sometimes you just got to pay a higher price because you don't have the cash to cover it. But sometimes you might be getting to this point. So I have, when I build the Excel spreadsheet, you can literally put in the quantity, put in the price it's going to cost, put in an expected sales value, figure out when you're going to be cash flow positive, check another one, and then you kind of know when you've tipped into that next quantity. Because so many times people buy the quantity thinking I'm saving money, but they don't have the cash to continue or do the marketing to sell, which is even more catastrophic. So I always tell people, it's business finance is not like personal finance. You don't go to the store to get the best price on things. Sometimes you have to actually pay a little bit more. So that's a really good point. Now, Leeanna, before we get into where you went with the retail, I want to back up because I know our audience likes to have any of this information. So I know you were selling it online. Any information, a lot of people here are just setting up online. They're trying to figure out whether to use Shopify or whether to use this or how do you, take credit cards and stuff. And so by this point, it's probably old news because you've been doing it. But any little tidbits of information for anyone in the audience that's dealing with website sales now that you can share?
Yeah, we actually started on Squarespace because being designers, that's the platform I had used to make websites for clients. And I was familiar with it. So, and they do have a store function. Use Shopify would be my advice. It's so much more powerful. It's made for that. Squarespace isn't. Maybe they've changed. But when I was using it, Shopify really helped, and it helped us control everything. And I was still learning everything about online sales because we switched so quickly. And I think the main thing is just I was like, oh, I'm going to put my website out and I have to have everything totally ready because I'm going to turn it on and I'm going to get 10,000 orders and going to have to call the post office to get a truck. And, I was ready. I had envelopes and thousands of labels and I was good, and turned it on and nothing happened because nobody knows you're out there. So I'm just like, okay, where are the orders? I turned on the website. Where are the orders? And yeah, that doesn't happen. Don't let it discourage you. Oh
my God, that is another thing.
If you build it, they will come. They will not.
No, they won't. I have all the new entrepreneurs telling me that. Well, I'm just going to put it online and I'm going to do one post on Instagram and it's going to go. And I always tell them, unless you're selling drugs or sex, it really doesn't work that way.
Yeah, unless you have a connection to, I don't know, somebody super, super famous who's going to plug it for you.
So what did you do when no orders came? What was your steps for starting to get the word out?
I think my first one was panic. I panic and cry a little, but then I just was like, okay, I need to just get the word out. I need to start figuring out how to get people to know what it is. And we didn't have any money really set aside for marketing. So we tried to just use Instagram and Facebook as best we could. And I started writing into people who needed blog posts for different things that felt related, and just tried to get the information out there as best I could, and started contacting people on Instagram if somebody messaged me or said, this seems interesting, where can I get it? I would tell them. And a lot of times I'd say, can I just send you a sample and see if you like it? And because for us, samples are pretty cost effective for marketing. So we were able to send people one to try out. And that really, if they liked it, then they kept buying it because they're like, oh, hey, I know about this company a little bit. And they were nice enough to give me one. And it really helped us build our community up that way.
Well, you know what I love about your product too is it's got repeat sales automatically. It gets used up, and you can use it and try it, and then it gets used up in repeat sales. And it's an inexpensive product and inexpensive to produce. Like I said, I just was so excited to have you on because this is like an entrepreneur dream beginning. One thing I want to go back and ask about Shopify, I have heard that, and the one thing I like to point out to everybody, unless it changes because things change behind the scenes, but as of to date, Shopify does not collect the sales tax for any out of state and internal sales tax. So that's the one thing, is you do have to deal with the sales tax on the Shopify platform. So I always like to bring that up. And if you don't know how to do that, take my sales tax class, okay?
I think I should take that class. I'm not 100% sure I'm doing it right.
And I am seeing that pretty much a lot of people are not, because the laws changed several years ago, and it changed kind of right before people were doing a lot of online e-commerce. So they really don't know. And Shopify doesn't collect it on your behalf. They'll charge it, but they don't collect it. And so what I see people doing is they put it on the invoice thinking it's being sent to the government agency, but it's really just going in their bank account and sitting there, which is technically, fraud, because you're collecting sales tax without a selling permit and then you're keeping it. That's not a good thing. So, ignorance of the law. So anytime somebody mentions Shopify, I always bring that up so people are aware to check in that even more. So now I know that you're in big box retailers. I know that because by the time I talk to you, you are starting to, and I also know that you're getting in bigger ones and bigger ones all the time. So how did it go from the website to where you're getting into the big stores? Everybody always loves to know this part. So please don't leave out any details. They sit on the edge of their chairs for this one. So take it away.
So yeah, we hung in there through COVID until all the buyers came back to work and were actually looking for products. And the first thing I saw was Walmart does a thing called Open Call USA for US made products. And they're committed to helping, I read something like, 10,000 small businesses of made in the USA products every year, like get into their stores. So, and it's a great program. So you apply, and they need pretty basic information just about your product. And then if they like it, they match you up with your buyer, which is the hardest part to me, is finding out who in these big companies is your department and who do you talk to and what is the window of time they're looking for product, because it's not all year long, which I didn't know when I started either. So yeah, I applied through Walmart's Open Call USA, and I actually got through to meet with the buyer. And it was great. She loved it. And she had a choice to add us in, but they redo their department in October. And this was in like summer. So it was like getting kind of close to fall. And she was like, we can't put you in until next October of like 2022 at that point, or no, 2023. And I was like, okay, well, that'll give me a year to get it together and figure out how to work with Walmart. They're huge. And then she called back like 20 minutes later and was like, I'm backing you in. You're going to go in this October. You need to scale up, and like, we need you shippable in 8 weeks. And at this point, I had like all of our inventory in my closet in my house. She's like, can you do that? And I'm like, of course. Yeah, of course. I had zero idea what I was committing to. No, and I've told her this now. Like, I had no idea. Like, they were talking about how they do invoices through this thing called EDI, and I'm like writing it down, like look up EDI. But we did it again. Like I said, our product is simple. But I called our printer. I called somebody I knew who'd worked with Walmart before. I just called people and said, here's what I did. What don't I know? What do I need to do first? How long will this take? Can we meet these deadlines? And, and people just, they gave me the information they could and then connected me with another person. I'd say, okay, so, how do I ship to Walmart? I can't do it from my house, at my garage. What do I do? And so I found a company that ships for me. And then I said, okay, what information do you need from me? And I just asked a lot of questions, and most people who are good at what they do and like what they're doing really like to help people, I found.
Yeah.
So I think if somebody's not helpful, then it's not the right person anyway.
Oh my God, put that one, Lauren. If somebody's not helpful, it's not the right person anyway. That is just so beautiful. Another thing that I know, I had a lot of experience with Walmart, Costco, and the big box retailers back some time ago. and they don't always pay the invoices within 30 days. Sometimes it's 60 and 90, and you have to get the product made, you have to ship the product, you have to give it to them, and then you invoice them. And so I often saw that working with the big box retailers brought a whole new set of financial issues. And speak on that a little bit. And also, if I can add on to this, one of the smart things, and this is what I noticed immediately when I spoke to you, is I was concerned because you were just getting into big box retailers that you didn't have enough profit margins in your product to allow you to, because I see that all the time. But you did. You were on top of it somehow. You already estimated, imagined this, etc. So I know I'm asking you two huge questions, but run with them, because that's a really impressive part that I noticed.
I think like I have to say Walmart, I think they really have tried hard. Like they're still a big company and it's still kind of a bear to figure out. But they really have tried hard to make it as easy as they can for small business. And they have a lot of resources. And I happen to have an amazing buyer there who's just been so helpful. I know some people haven't had that experience, but I've had a great experience with them. We're also in CVS. We just launched there in January.
Congratulations.
Thanks. That's been a completely different experience. I think one thing I didn't know is every big company has their own system and they're nothing alike. So you can't, like, I was like, I figured out Walmart, I can figure out anyone. CVS is completely different. It's just, it's a much more difficult system, I think, for a small business to navigate. So I've had to outsource getting some help with that, just because it started to get to be a little bit much for me to figure out to get paid on time. Because they have a lot more just requirements and things that I didn't quite understand when I signed up with them. But I'm learning, so that's the good part.
You really have to have cash when you start playing with the big boys, because like Costco was notorious for taking quite some time to pay, and you have to stay on and hound them. You can't do like you're a small company and just send an invoice and go, oh, they're going to pay me. You got to make sure and if you don't get, you probably have learned these words in the system. Is it in the system? Being from a CFO perspective, that was how I would, say, well, we can't pay you. It's not in the system, right? So I would use the other side to, keep cash. But you got to make sure your invoice is in the system, because if it's not, the clock didn't even start.
Exactly. And how many things, if they send something and you don't respond, it'll stop something. And I was like, if you didn't even know to look for it. So I'd say the learning curve, like somebody had told me before I went to Walmart, they said, just plan on not being paid for the first 3 months, which wasn't the case, but they said, just make sure. So I did that with CVS too. They said, like, make sure you can get by for the first 3 months, because you're learning the system, getting in the system, things are going to go wrong. And they mean well. They're not bad companies. They're big, and they have a lot of people every day doing stuff. So things fall through the cracks, and I didn't know what to ask to say. They're like, oh, well, you're supposed to let us know that you set up this. I'm like, where did it say that? Like, nobody told me. They're like, you have to set up this separate thing to get the automatic transfer for your payments. Like, so you don't get a paper check, which adds like 2 weeks to the process. And like, where was that paperwork? Nobody told me that.
Yeah, you learned the hard way. And you got good advice on the 3 months, because that's what I always tell people. Make sure you got cash flow for 3 months. It does get going better once you're in the system, because then you're in, the money flows quicker. But that first initial setup definitely takes some time happening. Now, how many quantities do you now ship to these? I mean, I'm assuming you're way over your first 500 order, right?
Yeah, like we had to design a case box for our product for CVS and Walmart. They had different requirements. That was another thing. Like the way we actually package it to send it to their warehouses is different, because they have different requirements. And so they have different costs. But yeah, I mean, we were in over 1,700 Walmart stores. We have one SKU in Walmart. We have 3 SKUs in over 2,700 CVS stores.
Guys, can you believe this on the call here today on the show? Isn't, like I said, that's why I had to have her on. I mean, this is just amazing. And I want to go back. I remember your spreadsheet at first because I had to understand your spreadsheet so I could advise. And I was trying to figure out, because you were like, well, it's this cost for this, but it's this cost for going to Walmart, but it's this cost. And then I had to learn that there's these additional packaging costs depending on where you're selling. And then we had to build that into the spreadsheet to analyze. So here's, guys, why I keep saying to you, if you don't do an analysis at the beginning when you set your selling price and these opportunities come, you can't take advantage of them, because I bet you added several percentages of, cost onto things once you started selling in these big box retailers. And by the way, guys, anybody in the audience, if you have any questions for Leeanna, put them in the Q&A. I'm watching now. I'll make sure I have enough time. So I just wanted to give a heads up on that. So now I've got it. We got the story. You're in these big box retailers. All this stuff is happening. I want you to comment on your financial management, because yes, I did bring you down the road, but you already had some data. Anything you can share, how it started, what's your thought process, how you had this common sense, maybe even since we've been working, how you look at it differently. How are you using Excel and finance knowledge to manage your company going forward?
I have to fess up, I did not know how to use Excel when I started my business. So that was kind of funny.
Wow, I wouldn't have guessed it. I would have, you should see your sheets. I mean, they're all colors in this. I didn't realize you didn't know how to use Excel. That's amazing. Okay, that's one I didn't know. Keep going.
The designer in me has to make everything really colorful so I could separate it visually for myself. But yeah, I mean, first it was just like, I think it really came from a fear of not wanting to make a huge mistake. So at every decision I made at the beginning, it was like, okay, if this goes horribly wrong, how much am I in for? Am I okay with that? So, and I think that just kept me from making too many really crazy decisions, because it's like, well, should I start with 500 or 5,000 of this? It's like, let's start with 500, because if I get stuck with them, I'm not out as much money as if at 5,000. Then there's more pressure. And then, so I think for cost, I just was pretty conservative along the way and tried to make it so I wouldn't, cause any huge damage to our finances. Yeah. And then once I learned Excel, that was super helpful. And then I think the most important thing, it's like one thing you told me at our very first call was you need to understand your numbers so you could make decisions. And I had everything in originally sort of at one average cost. And I'm like, it's not really working because it's not how I sell. Like the quantities don't work. So then we split it up. And I actually just last week took off one of the platforms that we were selling on, because I was able to look at it and say, okay, even if I double sales month over month on that, it's like a wholesale platform. If I double my sales on there every month, which I don't know how I'd even do, I'm still not even going to make very much money. So it's not a good use of my time or my energy. And I'm going to make $1,000, which compared to CVS and Walmart, it's like, I'm sure this time could be better spent trying to get people into those stores than onto this little wholesale platform that I don't even know how to get customers on.
Okay, I'm just so excited, guys. This is why I wanted to be on. Remember, I keep telling you, when you know how much you're making at each distribution, you might say, this isn't paying off. I can increase sales all day. Remember, I always say you don't want to be more tired and more broke,
Exactly.
And because the data was lined up in the way we lined it up, which I got to say, she had some great data. It took me a while. I think we had 3 calls making that Excel spreadsheet till we finally got there.
Yeah.
But it's so true, and you're able to make decisions from it. Now I've noticed you're managing through that Excel. It's almost become the backbone of your company now.
Definitely. Now, every time I do anything, I go to the spreadsheet, and if I add an expense, I put it in. I put how many months it's for, see what it does to everything, and it gives me a good way to feel good about the decisions that I'm making for the company. That there's still a chance that they're not the best decision to somebody else, but at least in my head, I understand what the implication is, what it's doing to the business, and I get to decide if I feel it's worth it or not, which is the best I can do right now, since I'm I'm the company.
Right. Yeah. And you've actually been able to manage a lot, some large quantities. That's what I was amazed at, is you're selling in these big box retailers, you're purchasing some big quantities, you're shipping, but you really have a good group of companies that you've
Mhm.
surrounded, the people who ship for you, the people who manufacture for you. So it's really you, the company, but you've got these staff through these independent companies that are supporting you well. I see a lot of times people stay with manufacturers that, or shippers or whoever, and they're not doing a good job, and they get where they won't leave them and they're only harming them. But it looks
Mhm.
like you spent the time really finding the right people.
And I think it's every entrepreneur needs to decide, do they want to do it sort of in-house and control everything, or they want to find people they can trust and work with? Because like we could have gotten a warehouse and hired people to help us pack, but then we're managing a team of people and we have a lease that we're responsible for. And I wasn't ready to take that on, especially during COVID. It didn't seem
Right.
like a good thing for us to do. So it pushed us to really find people that I could trust and felt good about working with. And a few people along the way, I'm like, that may have been a mistake. It didn't turn out the way I had hoped. But I learn and move on.
We got a great question from Christine in the audience, and it falls perfectly into what you were just saying about getting good people and trusting them. She said, I assume you had contracts with the manufacturer, Walmart, et cetera. Did you have a lawyer comb through the contracts, or did you trust the process? Excellent question, Christine. Thank you for submitting.
With the retailers, with like Walmart and CVS, and we're just talking to a distributor now, you can have, I read the contracts. I actually am lucky enough to have family that is, they're attorneys. So, but they would redline stuff and they basically say, this is our contract.
Yeah.
There's certain points you can negotiate. I've learned to say what points are negotiable on here, and they'll just tell you, because they don't want to go back. They're busy. They don't want to go back and forth 900 times. So I'll say, like, this is preventing me from, like with Walmart, I said like their first payment terms were too long. I'm like, I'm too small. I can't wait 2 months to get paid. So they were able to change my payment terms for me.
Interesting.
CVS said that this is our contract, and they're very take it or leave it. It may be different with different products, different buyers. I've heard different stories from different people, but I think it's a balance, because I feel like I should try harder to change some of the terms, but being as small as we are, it's a balance of the opportunity and the risk. And I think it's just a personal thing, but I found there's not much you can do other than just make sure that the basic things in their contract aren't something that's going to harm your particular company. We also have a patent. We're patented and trademarked and everything. So we don't have to worry that much about them actually reproducing our product or something, because they can't do that anyway, because we have a patent.
That what you spoke of just now is what I experienced, because a lot of times I was in the CFO position for bigger size companies who had money. We had lawyers on staff, right? You could throw a little bit more money at it. So we would go at these contracts, and the lawyers would redline all of this, right? They would give it back, then they give it back and say no.
Yeah.
And they just spent all this money for a lawyer on things they couldn't change. So that was brilliant, saying which part is negotiable, because what I've noticed is in the sales, when you're talking about different kind of contracts, one-on-one, maybe, but with a lot of the big manufacturers or distribution relationships that have been around for a long time, they know what can change and they know what can't change. I'm really amazed that Walmart was so easy to work with in changing the terms. I didn't have a lot of experience with Walmart. My experiences were a little bit more with the Costco's and a couple other big box retailers, and they would not change terms. So that was great. So another wonderful bit of tidbit to put in the chat is ask which part of this is negotiable. And I think it becomes really a question of making sure you comprehend everything in the contract. Just like you said, I said, make sure you read it, make sure you understand what it means. But I see sometimes too much money spent on lawyers, and the lawyers are going to do what they do. They're going to,
Yeah.
take and redline everything. And I have seen companies that made very little in sales get a lawyer bill up to like 30,000 just negotiating a contract. It's been kind of ridiculous now. So tell us, where do you see the company going? You got some cool things on the horizon. I think we're talking tomorrow or next week, I forget which, on some more things that are happening. But where's the company going? What's happening now?
Right now we're in talks with a really big distributor. And that will be great because it'll help us get in a lot of independent pharmacies, which is where we've really wanted to be for a long time. And that was a learning curve too, to find out, like, I thought I'd just go into pharmacies around where I live and they would just order, but learning more about how they work, they don't have time to work with 50 different companies selling them product. They order from distributors. And it's easier for them and it makes their life easy. So they're not going to order that way. And there's tens of thousands of these pharmacies we basically can't get into the way we were trying. So this will really help. So we're working on our negotiating with them, such as it is. They sent us a contract and we're reading it.
And distributors are challenging because some of them take so much money. So much money in it. In fact, we just got a question from Mary. How do you choose a distributor? What are you finding is negotiable? What are you finding as choices? I find choosing distributors more so than being in retail. One of the scariest things, I've seen people sign deals that the percentage they take is just ungodly. So talk about that with everybody.
Well, I think one thing is use your spreadsheet and know what the most you can pay is, because I have friends who've talked to distributors who want as much as 30% off wholesale and some that are as low as 10. I think it's balancing what they can bring to you. The more they ask for, the more they will hopefully bring to you. I think I've learned too to understand that know all of the costs. Like, I still have to get the product to the distributor. So I have costs for that. I have the EDI costs. I have make sure you know all your costs before you sign the bottom line and know what you're really making.
We should tell people what EDI means. Yeah, we better.
I don't know what it stands for. It's like something like electronic data interchange. All these big places require you to sign up with an outside service. There's different people who offer it, and it's called EDI. But basically, what I was told is they used to fax POs, like you would get a fax saying, here's our order. And then you'd have to fax back something saying, I got your order. Now it's all electronic. So it goes through this website portal.
And it costs money.
It's several $100s a month. Every company you add to it costs you more money. There's different plans with different companies, but basically every piece that comes through and goes, it's like how texting used to be when it first started on phones, where every text you sent coming and going, they charged you for. They charge you for every communication through the portal individually and by page. So like if they send a 10-page thing, you pay for 10 pages.
Yeah, it does.
So it's like, that's the thing I didn't know even when I first started, is there's all these other things you need to make this communication work with these companies, and they require it. And if you don't have it, some of them have workarounds that are free, but they make a lot more work for you. So then it becomes a time thing. Is it a good way for you to spend your time? Yeah, I think it's mostly just the more you know your numbers, the more you'll know what's even possible for you. Like I always say, like, we're on Amazon, and as anybody on Amazon knows, if you're selling your own product, you're probably not making much on Amazon. But right. For us, it's like a necessary evil. We know that's like our worst profit margins on Amazon. But we know that's a necessary thing right now for us in our category, and having a way for people to get it. We need to be on Amazon.
Yeah. And what I would look at a lot of times, and I think we looked at it with yours, and I would do this, you know, with as a CFO and with clients, is I look at what I call the blended rate. you have like a certain amount of profit you get here, you get a little bit more profit there. It's combined the blended rate. So you would constantly be just checking the different amounts and make sure you're correct. And if the blended rate of all the sales gets too low, you got to off one of them. And you might say, well, I need to be on Amazon, it's low, so I'm going to have to get rid of this other one. And you just keep working with it to make sure you get that profit margin. So it really is about that aspect. In fact, I'm going to do a quick answer on Mary with 2 questions. And this is going to be a shout out to everybody, because I know you guys, as long as I have the show, which is forever, and all my things, you're going to ask me this question, and I'm always going to tell you the same. So the first question is, do you have a template? No, there is no such thing as a template. And you know what, guys? I'm going to tell you right now, you know how I always say Hollywood grabbed entrepreneurship? The desire to seek a template for your company is your downfall. Yes, I put that in this chat. The desire for you to seek a template for your company is your downfall. Your desire to seek a template means you're going to get something that applies to everything. You're going to stick the numbers in. You are going to go, rah, rah, I'm so cool, I put the numbers in. And if I ask you a question, you're not going to know what they mean. Every one of these is built from scratch. I work with the client. You can create them. We talked about that last week. You'll see more presentations. There is no such thing as a template. And the template you get is not going to get you where you need to go. And Mary, this is the question. Great questions, Mary, by the way. Thank you for submitting. On the best profit margin, here's the answer to the best profit margin. You ready? And I'm going to tell you this, guys, again and again. There is no number. The best profit margin is enough money left over to pay your overhead, to pay yourself, and have money for reinvestment. It depends. The spreadsheet you create that's not a template that puts in your actual numbers is where you get that number. So that's where understanding the numbers, and like, going back when I first met with Leanne, she had the data, and I kept telling you it's the relationship between the data, it's the alignment of the data. And we worked on Zoom, and I showed you how I took and aligned it. And I always kind of think of it like dough. I'm taking it and I'm pulling it and I'm stretching it and I'm aligning it, and then I'm putting it there. And then all of a sudden the spreadsheet goes from static to dynamic, and it tells you all those things. And that's where you have to come
Yeah,
from.
I mean, we went back and forth for months, because every time, like, there's where we started and you say, okay, now you fill out this part, then go to fill it out and realize, okay, I need more information here, or I'm not understanding this. I come back and say, I did this, but I don't understand the number that resulted. And you'd explain it to me. And then it's like, oh, it's like magic. It's like, that's what that means. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it does. I mean, because it takes a while using it. I remember even you go, I've got so many revisions, I got to see which one I send back. And I think, no, we got to break this down. And usually my answer is, we got to break it down more. We got to break down more. When something changes the dynamics, you have to have a separate category to allow that change. We got 2 great questions. So one of them is, do any of the contracts, did they make you not work with anybody else and non-compete? I doubted in that space.
No, we've actually had one distributor ask us to do that, and we just said we were too small to do that at the moment, and it didn't even flinch. They'll ask, but yeah, I mean, there's not really a reason to, unless you can go in negotiating really strong, and right now we're just too small to demand anything.
And I agree. I mean, I always play both sides, and I played on the manufacturer side and I played on the client side, so I always say, if you're got the product, don't sign any non-competes. And then when I've been the manufacturer, I'm like, make them sign non-competes, so and these are argumental points. We put them in contracts. I put them in contracts knowing I may not get away with it, but if I get away with it, it's a cool thing, so you try to really avoid those at any cost. That's for sure. Now, you don't have any employees now, right? That's another question we got. You're still using these companies to support you, correct?
Yeah, we outsource different things, but I don't have any direct employees.
Which is, I'm always, I know this is terrible to say, but I'm a big fan of no employees as far as you possibly can. There becomes a point where it makes sense to do so. But when you're growing and you need to be able to have the flexibility, having partners, that's what your companies are. They're partners. Having really good, strong partners can be so much more beneficial at that growing stage. So here I cannot believe we've been talking for a whole hour. I know, but I want to say you've given us so many tidbits. I can't even believe I'm asking for any more, but if you were to leave the audience with any kind of lessons learned or things you want them to know, well, I want to give a minute and just tell us what you would like us to remember.
I think my friend told me this because she went to a talk with entrepreneurs and she said, it was with the guy who started Justin's peanut butter that's like all over now.
Yeah.
He said it took him 7 years to be an overnight success. And it's because everyone thought he just bursted on the scene and was all of a sudden everywhere with this fancy peanut butter. And he'd been working for 7 years. And I think it's like I love Shark Tank, but that doesn't happen to very many people where you're going to become this multi-million-dollar company overnight. And then that comes with its own problems growing that fast. So just plan for slow growth over a longer period of time, and you'll probably build a sustainable business. I mean, we're only just under 3 years in, and I feel like we're growing at a good pace, and we get knocked down every so often, but we're able to recover because it's not so dramatic. It's a learning lesson and we move on, but we don't get just the rug pulled out from under us completely.
Oh my God, you hit all my key points. I always talk about the people that, say, hey, this band's an overnight success, and they get angry and say, you don't know the dives I played in. You don't understand, So you have hit on every point. I'm going to go one more question, and this one might be, just no, there really isn't. But is there, between big box and then you got Amazon, then you got a distributor, these are 3 different ways, right? Is there any best to aim for, or did you find like I should have went here first, or anything? I mean, in comparing, if you did a comparison sheet, what would you say?
I mean, they're all different. I think it really depends on your product and where your customer is. And to get to our customers, we need to be in retail. If you have a product that people, like to buy online, like to subscribe to online, then it's a different story. Our lowest sales are directly on our website.
Okay, interesting.
People like to go to CVS, to Walmart, Amazon, and then our website. Some of it's just, people are skeptical of things being new on the internet. They don't know if they're being scammed. They could have heard me speak like this and know I'm a real person, and they'll still be like, but to be safe, I'm going to Amazon.
I do the same thing.
$99. It's not like you're gonna lose a lot on it, but like I've gotten emails from people who are like, I ordered from your website and now my daughter's telling me that it's a scam. Can you confirm you're not a scam? And I'm like, I'm not a scam. Like, your stuff, here's your tracking number. It'll be there tomorrow.
No, I get it. I tend to, find something I have to admit it. I find it on a website and go to Amazon and buy it. I am the same way. So like I said, Amazon is just someplace you need to go, but you need to make sure your profit margins definitely allow for that. Well, God, I can't thank you enough. You would think that I put the words in your mouth because you hit on every single key point that I wanted the audience to hear. This has been just fantastic. Lauren, I'm going to bring you back on. I'm in awe. Thank you so much, Leeanna.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thank you, ladies. It's so good. Look, the chat is still going crazy. Such great feedback. It was funny because Emma earlier on made a comment about the 7 years to be an overnight success, and then you said it. So I'm like, Emma, did you see that?
And if anyone wants to reach out to me directly, they can. You can message me through Instagram or my website, whatever, if anyone wants to talk.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm just kind of scanning the chat. I don't see it during it, but like I said, we really didn't have the whole party. The party was happening in the background, and I can say from just scanning it, a lot of thanks to you, to presenting a lot of nuggets, a lot of great information. We just keep producing one crazy show after another. It's our guest. We got excellent guests. And by the way, I should have mentioned everybody who's contacted Lauren to contact me. I think I've crossed you off the list. I've got appointments with people. I've talked with people. So if you've reached out to us and I didn't get back to you, give another shout to Lauren so I can, okay? And if anybody wants to find out more about the spreadsheet, you just get in touch with me, and we're going to do another, just start with a blank spreadsheet at the end of the month too. But Leeanna, I just can't thank you enough. This has been invaluable information once again.
Oh, thanks.
So Lauren, I'm passing it back to you. I know you're going to hang out for a little while as the chat keeps going. And anybody, I know there's some questions that maybe got in the chat that I didn't answer. Send them in. I'll read the chat. I'll touch on them. I see there's a question about ideal profit margin. I'm going to pick up a little bit on that next week, and I'll make sure I'll do it on Ask Lori. So I didn't miss it. I just want to make that more of a thorough explanation. So Leeanna, we're going to be talking soon. I know you got some new things we're going to talk about, so I'll be seeing you soon. Lauren, thank you for taking care of everything like you always do. And to the wonderful guests that come on and the wonderful attendees of the show, I can't thank you enough. And I will see everybody next week.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Leeanna. Thank you so much for joining us.
Bye.
Okay, bye guys.
Have a wonderful day. To our guests, I will, like Lori mentioned, hang on a bit. I want to be sure you guys have all the contact information you're looking for. If you scan the chat, you will find Leeanna's information, her website, as well as her Instagram. I believe her Facebook is in there as well. So feel free to reach out, as she mentioned. And then I'm also going to repost the information related to how you can get in contact with us. And so there will be our, I'm sorry, if you're looking to share any information to receive information or have any questions answered, please click that link that I just added. You can also, there's a link to our submission form. And on that form, you can suggest future shows or let us know whether or not you want to be on our show one of these upcoming weeks. And then here is our YouTube. Please be sure to click on that so that you can see past shows, and feel free to share with your friends. The link that I've just inserted now is for those of you who aren't an SBDC client. Please be sure to become a client. And once you do so, here's my email. Be sure to send me an email so that Lori and I are aware, excuse me, and we can get you set up with a one-on-one with Lori. And then let's see. I think that is it. Again, thank you so much for joining us today. Any residual questions, be sure to send me an email. You see that lsimpson@lbcc.edu. Thank you to all of you, and we will see you next week, Wednesday at 10 a.m. for another show, Small Biz Talk, solutions for your small business. Have a great week. Thank you.